Here we go. All right, everyone. Hello and welcome to our Teaching Tuesday for the week of December 14th. I'm super excited to have Dr. Blythe Cleverly here with us today. She's a brain and behavior expert. Her and I have had long conversations all about questions I've had with family members. She's so bright. She knows so much. And I want to welcome her to Teaching Tuesday as she the one that's going to be teaching us today all about living an extraordinary life, about thinking and feeling deeper. There's so much she brings to the table in so many subjects. I couldn't even possibly go deep enough or do justice to who she is and her longevity of education. So Blythe, I would love to hand it over to you for you to be able to talk a little bit about who you are, introduce yourself to everyone on Facebook as well as here in our Zoom chat, and go ahead and get started.
Perfect. Thank you, Colleen. Always a pleasure to be here. I'll start sharing my screen right away, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Get right into the presentation. So I've done a presentation for everybody, and I think that's going to be probably the best way to do it. So I'm going to go right here into my PowerPoint and go into presentation mode. So welcome everybody. Thanks for joining me. And my name is Dr. Blythe Cleverly, and I have a business called Fork in the Road because I help people when they're at a fork in the road in their lives. And this is going to be a little presentation for you. I'm not super tech savvy. I won't see your comments. Colleen will see them. But hopefully at the end, if I can, I'll leave a little bit of time for questions. We'll see how we're doing. So who am I? Colleen actually did a good job of introducing me. I'm a brain and behavior expert, and I have doctorates in holistic health and in core education and various other things, but it's really not as important today who I am as it is who you are. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. This extraordinary person. And could you be that type of person? What does that even mean? So what we're going to talk about today, what you're going to learn is what makes that profile up. How common is it? What are the advantages and disadvantages of being this type of person, and the skill sets that could help them, especially if they're dealing with big circumstances in their life, to give help and guidance and hopefully some practical value to you today. And also at the end, some offerings. So what makes up this profile? Well, they have certain things in common. Now, they won't necessarily have everything in common, but these are the most common things that I find. They're very perceptive people, and they have what I call the sensitive brain type. So that's actually the terminology for it is the highly sensitive person. I actually prefer to call it the highly perceptive person. To me, that's more accurate. They are extrasensory and analytical, so they think a lot. And they're always connecting the dots of things, and they feel more things, whether it's physically, mentally, and emotionally. They're just more aware of what's happening within and without. And they tend to be this extra thinking, feeling, responsible, extra detailed, and extra driven person. That's why I say they're extraordinary. They're beyond the ordinary in these ways. So, how common is this? Well, most of the extraordinary people have this highly perceptive brain type. And this brain type is about 20% of the population, which is only 1 in 5. And the main point I want to make about that is that means we're outnumbered. And the trap that we fall into in life, no matter who we are, is we tend to feel that other people are going to think the way we think. And that's just not true. And it leads to a lot of misunderstandings. And when we realize that we're the minority, it certainly helps us to deal with relationships and with other people to have a greater understanding. There's advantages and disadvantages to everything in life. And with this personality profile, there's a lot of good things. There's a lot of advantages. So things that may be accurate for them is that they do tend to be problem solvers. You know, they're always connecting those dots and they're always thinking. So they can affect a lot of positive change in the world as long as they can get their mind under control. They are very observant. So they're a person that's going to see things that other people don't see. And there's a lot of value in that. They're skilled and they're focused. Now, they could be skilled at many different things. It's not all the same thing. And they can actually be very unfocused in some areas of their life, but really super focused, like this picture, on the things that interest them. And even though I have an A+ up here, their learning style can really be varied. So they could be kinesthetic instead. They could be very good with their hands versus book learning. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you made all the A+ in school, although a lot of them did. But there's some ways in which they excel in their learning styles. They tend to be very reliable, great employees, and good friends because they go that extra mile. They're extra doing people. And as they are extra feeling people, they tend to be more empathetic, more caring about how other people are feeling and anticipate those needs, even to the point of being empathic sometimes, which is a deeper level of empathy. So those are the advantages. So what about the disadvantages? So there's some common pain points that I see quite often. Number one is paralysis by analysis, which means that they're thinking so much that now they're just paralyzed. They don't know what to do. They get themselves stuck in their mind, in their brain. They become overthinking and overfeeling, and at the same time. And if you're overthinking and overfeeling, and you're not living in a perfect world, because who of us is living in a perfect world, then it's very possible that you could become disillusioned and have anxiety. You're not able to have that ignorance is bliss mentality. It's just not possible for you with this personality and brain type. So you will perhaps have more anxiety. That's why it's difficult for people to be in large groups. They feel like they're overwhelmed with what's happening around them. They can't observe everything that's happening around them. They can't deal with all of the stuff that's coming towards them from other people and anticipate the needs or whatever it is that they need to do. So socially, they may seem inept sometimes, or they may not want to be in a lot of social situations. A lot of these people are introverted, but not all. I'd say about 70% would be. And so the relationship issues sometimes are a little bit difficult for this personality and brain type. And they can burn out because they're always living on edge in that overfeeling, overthinking sort of way. So what do we do to help? So EOPs, they can be helped. There's a lot that can be done for them. Understanding first the etiology of what is it that's happening? What's the cause? Is it the brain type? Likely, most likely it's that they have that brain type. The personality lean can also be there of being, let's say, a giver, or a person who anticipates the needs of others. And then there's conditioning patterns that sometimes happen. So what I mean when I say that is we grew up in an environment where we're also taught to be that way. We're taught to be observant and always looking out for other people and helping them. So they need skill sets and they need tools, and everybody does. No matter who you are in this world, you need some skills and some tools to help you out. But exceptional people, the extraordinary ones, they need these even more. But the good news is they respond really well, because when you give them a thought and you begin teaching them, even if they don't look back at their homework or go back to notes that I've given them, they will circle that in their head. They can't help it. They're going to think about it and mull over all of what they've just been taught. So that's actually good.
Yeah.
So with the life manual.
Oh, it's farmers too now.
I think somebody needs to be muted if possible. Thank you. I say that we should have been born with a manual. So humans need skills and tools to deal with this human condition that we have, the thinking and the feeling. And so if we were born with a manual, it would have been so much easier for all of us. but we weren't. So we need to understand what to do with ourselves. These skills and tools, what I call the human condition that we're in, the first one that I like to teach people is what to do with your mind. So you're thinking, what do you do about this? The people that I work with always say that their wheels are turning. They're always thinking, they're overthinking, and they can't get it to stop. And if they could, they would, but they don't know what to do. So I tell them, who are you versus your thoughts? You need to understand first what your thoughts are, who you are in relation to them, and who's in control of them, and how do you control them? That's the big question, right? How do you control them? There's certain questions that you ask yourself when you have thoughts. In particular, is it true? Is it helpful what I'm thinking, right? Question and filter your thoughts. There are people who say, well, you shouldn't question your thoughts. I don't understand that, because you absolutely have to. It's your responsibility to question what you're thinking. Don't believe everything you think. In actuality, you don't. And a lot of what we think is not true. It's lies. And thoughts are ever changing. So if they're in control of us, we're going to be bouncing around everywhere in our lives and in our minds. So this is a really valuable skill set for people to have. And that's the beginning of things, because you know your emotions follow your thoughts. Then we're going to talk about the emotions. What do we do with this heart? And then we got the mind under control. What do we do with our heart? These emotions, right? And people will say, I want to turn them off. If there was a switch on my back, I would so flip that switch. But emotions have value. There's always a reason why we're feeling them. We don't want to turn them off. They add to our life to help survive and thrive. So I teach people emotions SOS, very quick, easy, effective 5-step method. I know Colleen have talked about this before in some of the other things we've done. And very, very quickly, I can say what these steps are. Now, when I have a client, I go over them in detail so that they understand them and how to perform them, but acknowledging and allowing them, breathing through it, getting the message, because there's always a message behind emotions, following through with the appropriate action, and then finally releasing them. So this could be an entirely different like slideshow and presentation that would take up way longer than what we have, but it's valuable information to have. We need to have skills around what to do with our feelings, the same way as we need skills about what to do with our thoughts. And people are so highly focused on IQ, the intelligence quotient, but it really should be matched with high EQ, the emotional quotient. And when that happens, your quality of life goes up dramatically. Your quality of life is more dictated by your emotional intelligence than it is by your intellectual intelligence. There was a Harvard study on that, really fascinating stuff. But if they're matched, then you're golden. So I've got a video series coming up actually with these 5 steps so that people can go through these 5 steps with me on video and then go back to that again and again until that becomes their norm of knowing how to deal with it. More under skills and tools that this extraordinary person needs is the life balance. So they tend to be a little off balance. If you're overthinking, overfeeling, overdoing, you're also quite often overgiving, and you're not enforcing boundaries. Boundaries can be really difficult for this type of person, and they have to learn the difference between being responsible to and being responsible for people. So there's a big difference there. One is a burden and the other is respect. Now, sometimes in life, we find ourselves in extraordinary circumstances, and that will happen throughout our lives. And so I've dealt with extraordinary people in a number of circumstances, way more than this, but these are a number of the most common ones that I've seen, and helping them to deal with these various things that they're going to be encountering in their life. So we're going to go through these one by one. The first one is a fork in the road. And so this is why I named my business this, is because it's at the point when we're standing before 2 roads that we're ready to make a choice. And we realize something at that point needs to change. We don't have a choice but to choose one way or the other. Something in our life is forcing that upon us. So whether that's physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual, what we do is we look at the patterns that got you here before so that you're not circling again down a road that you've already been down, you don't want to go down anymore. You need clarity usually at that point, because what is the expression we have? You can't see the forest for the trees. So somebody who is a skilled observer can help you with that and show you what your options are so that you can make the choice that you want to make at that pivotal point in your life where whatever you do is going to change things ahead. So your decision making, and decision making is really hard for this brain type because they're in over analysis. And so they tend to procrastinate in making decisions. With relationship codependency, very common thing, both professional and personal. Most people, when I say codependency, they only think about a relationship with a romantic partner. It doesn't have to be that. It can be a relationship with anybody, with a family member, with a friend. It can be with your work, where you put all of yourself into this and you lose what your worth is. Your worth becomes what you can do and what you can give. And sometimes this profile also goes into another profile of what I call the caregiver model. And we can discern that quite quickly by asking certain questions if that's another trap that the extraordinary person falls into, because there's certain skills for that as well. So responsibility 2 and 4 again comes up, the boundaries come up, the learning how to give in balance, and how do you know where that line is? People ask me that all the time. How do I know if I'm giving too much? Giving shouldn't hurt is the bottom line of that I say. Existential crisis. We're all going to experience it. And when we get to a certain age, we've experienced some losses in our life, and they become painful. Some of them become more and more painful as we see the losses perhaps of our parents. And it begins with our grandparents when we're younger, but then it gets closer and closer to home, and we come face to face with our own mortality. How do we deal with that, right? So some people call that a midlife crisis, where you're debating, what have I done? What was my purpose or my mission? Where am I going to? What's the meaning of it all? So in order to reason with yourself about this loss of hope and direction that you now don't have anymore, what do you do? The big questions need to be answered. For the extraordinary person and the highly perceptive person, they want those answers to the big questions. There's a lot of people who will go through life having shallow conversations. They're fine with it. For an extraordinary person, that's torture. They don't want to talk about the weather. They want to talk about shopping. They want to get down to the meaning of things, the core of things, the deeper things of life, right? So in a shallow world, that's really frustrating for an extraordinary person. Those big questions need to be answered. When we're kids, we ask them, what does this mean? What does that mean? And our parents may or may not have an answer for us. Those questions don't go away when we're adults, and they become even more prevalent the older we get, if we are this personality and brain type. The free thinkers, there's such craziness happening in the world right now. I know Colleen and I have talked about this before, and people are divided in how they're thinking. And this personality profile, who connects the dots of everything, they need an understanding of what's happening around them and how can people think the way they think. Remember, not everybody thinks the way we do, so we're outnumbered. And the proof that people don't think the way we do is that if they did, the world would look entirely different than what it looks right now. So there we go, we're outnumbered. The understanding that people don't think the way we do, and how could they possibly be thinking the way they're thinking, and how does the mind work, so that people can be very tunnel vision sometimes with some things. These tend to be outspoken truth seekers because they don't always have the filter that other people have. They're bothered by injustice, greatly bothered by injustice and abuses of power, and they will rebel against it. So seeing the big picture again, right? So they're always asking those big questions, and then seeing the big picture. How can people do things like this to each other? Or how can people think in a certain way? They need endurance within themselves and stamina, and they need to find their tribe and to reframe a couple of things that are happening to save their own mental health. And I go back to the serenity prayer, where you learn what you can and cannot control, and you do the things that you can, that are within your power, in order to maintain yourself. And what would those things be in the world that we're seeing in these circumstances that are certainly extraordinary? Addiction. I work a lot with addiction. It wasn't something that I had planned to do, but I have a high success rate with that. And it only makes sense that when a person thinks deeply, feels deeply, sees the things that are going on, are triggered by injustice, that maybe they want to zone out of that. Maybe they want to escape it. And so they'll turn to substances oftentimes. Most addicts that I've come across are actually really intelligent people. They just need these skill sets to be okay and to help them. So understanding the etiology, the brain has to do with addiction. So it's not just character weakness. It's not a character weakness. Oftentimes in looking at brain scans, I've seen that 3 generations will be affected. If there's alcoholism or use in the family, 3 generations can be affected. We can see that in the brain. And so if they never pick up a drink, let's say, there's no problem. But if they do, there could be a big problem. The other thing I see is dysglycemia, which is imbalanced blood sugars, for example. And oftentimes addicts, one of the easiest recommendations you can give to them is have a full stomach. You don't crave as much on an empty stomach. And then there's the conditioning, right? The internal and the external conditioning. If they saw it growing up, and all of the conditioning inside of I'm not worthy, or I need to get out of this and I don't know what to do, I can't think about this anymore, let's just numb out, right? So what can help? So physically, mentally, emotionally, I go through things with people about what can help them, those really easy tips that can make a world of difference about how bad those cravings are. And then getting down to the core of why they're escaping in the first place, which oftentimes is this brain type, is this conditioning, going through their beliefs and helping them to have the skills that they need to get through life. And doesn't everybody deserve that? Right? So there's a whole lot of stigmatism around addiction that I think we need to look at differently. And with spirituality, why do I have that there with addiction? That's weird. Well, actually, if you go through the 12 steps, they talk a lot about spirituality and God, but most addicts that come to me don't know what to make of those 12 steps. They don't know how to integrate them because they don't have a connection or relationship with anything spiritual at this point. And that's part of the problem, right? They don't have anything to run towards that's healthier. So it's explaining those in a way that they can be comfortable with. Going back to, let's say, the laws of physics and the universe versus church. Whatever it is that they resonate with, if they resonate with church, that's great too. But meeting people where they are and explaining it in ways in which they can understand, success is absolutely possible. And if you know somebody with this problem or with this personality type, you're probably connecting the dots right now about how they can be helped and who they are. And perhaps it's not entirely their fault that they're in the situation that they're in. They do have to claim responsibility, but how they got there is actually quite an innocent process quite oftentimes. And are they ready for change? Because if they are, then change can happen actually quite quickly for them. Entrepreneurship. A lot of people with this personality and brain type end up working for themselves because they're always thinking of a new idea. There's always something going on in the back of their mind. And because they tend to rebel against injustice. And the workplace isn't always the safest and fairest place to be. And they want to be in control. This brain type, they like control, right? Well, who doesn't? But they have a higher need for that because they want to control their environment internally and externally because there's more going on in it for them than there is for other people. So they need to learn balance. They can be very driven people. So they need to be scrolled back a little bit sometimes to learn balance between professional and personal life and gain some clarity, their relationship to themselves, to their business, and to others. Remember, I talked about that codependency can also be with a business. And when you understand the brain and behavior in business, you have all kinds of insight. So helping entrepreneurs, even with how they present themselves and with their relationships with their colleagues, that's another really big one, because there's a little bit of social ineptness there sometimes in understanding that that person doesn't think like you do. And you can have greater success so that your experience in business can be so much more elegant than maybe what it currently is. And that certainly applies for all of us that are women in business, doesn't it? The bottom line of all this is that the extraordinary person, the brain type, the personality, this person exists, and we are the minority. And there's advantages and there's disadvantages to it. And we need to learn how to make that to our advantage. Because when we do that, the world becomes a better place, not just for us, but because we're the thinkers and we're putting thoughts out into the world and we're action oriented, it's an advantage for the whole world when the extraordinary person rises to the top and is able to do so and keep themselves balanced, themselves in alignment. But they need those skills. They need those tools to be successful. I believe everyone does, but this personality type in particular benefits more from it, needs it more, embraces it more quickly, does even better with it. And especially if they're in extraordinary circumstances, they need them even more. So there is help, regardless of what situation that they're in, what brain type they have, there's always help. But for some people, it can excel them so quickly so that they change so rapidly that it's just a beautiful thing to see. It makes me very happy. So these are the things that we learned today. I told you what things we would learn, and then I told you what that all encompassed. And so here's the summary of it again. You know, what makes up that extraordinary person? I think you'd probably be able to answer now that they're deeper, they're extra thinking, extra feeling, extra doing. They tend to be extra responsible, extra detailed. How common is it? We're about 1 in 5 if we just go according to that brain type. The advantages and disadvantages we went over as being many, and the skill sets needed. So we talked today mainly about the mind and about the heart, but also in relationships, in different circumstances that we could find ourselves in, how there's help in guidance. And I said at the end that there would be an offering. So here's the offering. All you need to do is email me at blythecleverly@gmail.com, and I will send to you these 5 truths to free you from overthinking and to be able to take back control of your mind. And when you do that, you take back control of your life as well. I'm working on a book to come. Remember I said I wish there was a life manual? Well, that's kind of what I'm working on. So I won't be able to put it all in one book. It's going to be a series, actually. I call it the Extraordinary Series. And the first one is going to be Swimming in the Deep End. And it is a life-preserving manual for deeper thinking persons in a shallow world. For people who feel that they're all alone out there, adrift in the sea, they are not. You are not alone. If you have this personality type, this brain type, you don't have to drown in a sea of emotions. You don't have to be in turbulent thoughts over and over again, or feel like you're just bobbing out there alone, wading through life. So regardless of what happens, you can find calmer shores, even when the storm is raging around you, regardless of those circumstances. When you know what to do with your thoughts and with your emotions, life becomes so much easier. So Swimming in the Deep End, that will be coming out. I'm not exactly sure what time. I'm in the middle of writing it right now. And then you can look for other ones in the future regarding some of these extraordinary circumstances as well that people find themselves in. And it'll be catered to those specific things as well. But this will be the base book that I'm thinking people will go to for the general knowledge. So here's my contact information. BlytheCleverly@gmail.com. You can find me at drcleverly.com on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn and YouTube. I'm either going to be under Fork in the Road Strategies or Holistic Health Counseling and Dr. Cleverly. So I hope that this has been of some value to you. I thank you for joining me today. I thank you, Colleen, for hosting me today. And we've left room for the question and answer, or the little bit chat between Colleen and I, if that's what you'd like to do. So I'll stop sharing my screen now. And I will hand it back over to you, my lady.
Thank you. Okay. So when we were going through that, and Fiona, I know Damara was off and on, and then Fiona dropped out a little bit late, but Stephanie and I were like, oh my gosh, I think we're extraordinary peoples.
I don't doubt it. Oftentimes women in business really are. Yes.
Because Stephanie, you're extra everything.
No, no, I'm just extra in my dress sizes at this stage of my life. What's a little more room? You know what I mean? That's fine.
Yeah, no, it was interesting because as you were going through this, I was going through the bullet points, like saying, oh my gosh, that's me, that's me, that's me. And the funny thing is, I think so many of us out there, when you don't really kind of put yourself off in your own island or think you're a different person, you just do what you do every day and care about people and think deeper and think, more about people and care about people. And you do all these things without even realizing, like, isn't this just how everybody thinks? Isn't this just how everybody feels? And then when you were segregating that and really, spotlighting that, it's like, oh, so is there, I guess my question would be, because if we are those people, are there like specific, the one is to recognize that you are that person, right? But then once you recognize you are that person, where do you go from there? I mean, I feel like I live a pretty good life, being the person I am, but I'm sure I heard you saying that there was support for people like that, right? Do you surround yourself with other people like that, or?
Absolutely. Well, you accept that this is who I am.
Yeah.
And this is why I am as I am. So I'm not trying to be an overthinker, and people say, why do you have to be so intense? Well, I'm not trying to be intense. It's just who I am, right? And it's not, again, a character weakness. I'm not trying to be a difficult person. I just see what it is that is missing in different situations, or if there's, we make great editors, because if there's a flaw in something, like it jumps off the page to us, and then, I used to have to stop myself from editing other people's like application forms or like filling out forms from other colleagues and, doctors' offices and stuff. And, I found myself circling things and then say, okay, I got to stop doing this, man. I'm a pain in the butt, right? So understanding, okay, I'm not trying to be that way. I'm not difficult. This is the way my brain works. I will find my tribe, and that there's advantages to this as well. I can make the world a better place, not just, peeve everyone off, right? And so that's the beginning of it. And then for most of us, okay, so if you say, Colleen, I actually live a pretty good life and I feel like I'm pretty balanced, I'm going to bet that you learned yourself some skills. Somewhere along the line you had to. And at one point in your life, you weren't handling it so well.
That's
right?
correct. Like, I remember I got in trouble in corporate America once because our marketing team came out with this little like promo booklet, and there was like misspellings all through the booklet, and I circled them all and took it back to them, and I was like, hey, you guys, I know you printed this, but I got in a lot of trouble for that. This was so many years ago, and I thought to myself, I'm a grown ass adult. Like, why am I getting in trouble for pointing out like this is a bad misrepresentation of our company, and we shouldn't be handing this out to anyone because it shows that we're not paying attention to the details. And I think that's important. Right. And they were like, you're trying to take people down and spotlight the things that people are doing wrong. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm just trying to help the company. But that happened a lot to me, Blythe, along the way. Like, and Fiona's like, I totally agree. I've come to a place where, what'd she say, awareness and acceptance of my uniqueness in this area. So I think the people that we're supposed to be on this call are here because we are different. And my brain does think that way, but it's always in good, like it's always for the good, right? I'm never trying to be mean to anyone or hurt anyone's feelings. Everything's in good intent. Wouldn't you say? Like, yes. Stephanie's like, yeah.
Yeah, that's a perfect example, Colleen. It really is perfect. I'm glad I can say ass. I wasn't sure if I could. Pain in the ass. There you go. But we do tend to be that way. But, we're great people to have on their team because really what you were doing was a favor.
Mm-hmm.
A favor to them. And, editing costs money. Mm-hmm. And if you have somebody with that eye, that's great. I don't take it personally when somebody sends me something, oh, there's a little correction here. Thank
Yeah.
you. Right. Thank you for that. And you were thinking about the best interest of the company, but they took it personally. And it's sad because they don't think the way you do. So, and this is the thing, I call this innocent perception. Most of the time, people will react to you the way that they would according to their motivation in that same scenario. So that person, if they were to have done that, would have been trying to take you down. They would have been trying to find fault with you and pick at you. And so they automatically gave you the same motivation, the same intention as what they would have had. So that tells you a lot about that person immediately. Okay, so this is innocent perception, is that we can see them innocently in what they're doing because they're thinking we think like them. That's exactly what happened there. Colleen thinks like I do. So if I were to have done that, it was because I'm trying to make her feel not good enough.
Right. Malicious intent. And it's so interesting that you say that, because that's why I really feel like God gave me, this vision of no judgment, right? Seeing people for everything that they bring to the table. And in the areas that they struggle in is just areas of opportunity for them to, do better, more, do more. But I always thought like, well, that was just something that God gave me and that's what I possess. And I don't see people in judgment. But what I'm hearing you say is there's probably a lot of extraordinary people out there,
Well, 1 in 5 approximately. And this is going according to that brain type. Now, not everybody who is extraordinary has that brain type, but I do find that most people, like, it's kind of in sync with each other. Right. So that's just a guesstimate, and not everybody who is extraordinary will have the same skill sets. So while you and I will be those people who edit things out, right? Not everybody will have that. So like I said, some people are highly kinesthetic and they'll see what's going on. They'll step back and they'll be more observant, and maybe they won't speak out, because remember, about 70% again are introverted. Not everybody is as forward speaking as what you and I may be, right? So we're probably on the cusp in between introvert, extrovert. We recharge our batteries alone, but we can, present ourselves well to the world. We'll put it that way. Not everybody's going to do that. Not everybody's going to be the editor. Not everybody's going to be skilled with English or with language or literature, right? So the percentage of extraordinary people that will do what you and I did is maybe slim, but we will find our tribe. So he's like, well, I thought everybody was like that. We will find like-minded people, because these are the people that will intrigue us and we can actually have a conversation with. So we're going to gather them to ourselves. And now you've done well in your life, Colleen, because throughout your life, you realize, I need to figure out what to do with how I'm thinking and how I'm feeling. I need to revamp myself. I've been at forks in the road and I've learned from them. And so you are where you are in success, and you've had to learn balance probably in your business. It's probably been a challenge for you. A lot of these things have probably been a challenge, but you figured out somehow you learned these skills. Not everybody can do that. A lot of people need the guidance to find that. And you've probably found books or other people or counseling or something that's helped you along the way to gain the amount of wisdom that you have now, the skills that you have now to have that successful life. And for a lot of people, I'm that guide. Or hopefully my book will help them, or other books will help them. They'll have other guides to get them there, right? But we do seek that. Those of us who are successful as extraordinary people, somehow we've learned skills.
Yeah.
You do a good job of cultivating, even with the lead up organization, let alone your personal life, because you really are good about bringing people out and highlighting something that they might own or they don't know yet. And I think that that's a big thing. I always struggle because I love to give feedback. I love to give feedback, and not everyone does. But I'm like, why can't we just work, together? And if I'm doing something that isn't right, I'd love to have you tell me, because I only take compliments personally as my spiel. But I think that that's something that this lead up platform that you have done is helping people hear a voice, even in a Zoom call, and they might not have ever spoken up before in an organization, and to have you give a comfortable place is really, like you said, commendable.
Yeah, it's interesting that Stephanie just mentioned that about constructive feedback, because a lot of people don't take it well. And I've always been one like, the whole learning beneath you, leadership is beyond you. It's like, I want to be a student at every turn. I want to learn more and more. And so the humility on being a student is being able to admit, like, I don't know that. And I need to learn from other people. And no matter who that person is, you just take the time to learn from them, right? Whether maybe they were a student of yours at one time or is, you can still learn from them. And I think so many people, it's hard for them to do that. They feel like there's a place for everybody, right? Like a hierarchy. And I don't see it that way. I see it as an opportunity for us to learn from everyone, no matter what. And, that's what keeps us, our knowledge growing, our wisdom, our experiences.
Mm-hmm. There's a base curiosity that's there for extraordinary people that other people just don't really have, because we're always looking to make connections with things. We're connecting the dots of things, putting it in, oh, that goes in this file. And when we have more information,
Interesting.
we take that out and we catalog it differently than what other people might. And we tend to have, even though we're overthinkers, we do tend to have a more positive outlook, which is interesting. With that brain type, that we have that curiosity and that innocence about us still, and we naturally lean into what we do, what our talents are. So you've done that in your business, and I'm sure a lot of the women who are in lead up have done that. It's their natural thing. And if everybody had the same ability, Colleen, that you do, to be able to pinpoint where a person needs to improve or how to help somebody, then you wouldn't have the business that you do. I mean, that's evidence that not everybody thinks the same way you do, is that there's a market for what you do because it's unique and it's valuable. So I think for us, we tend, oh, that's just who I am. We dismiss it. Other people must be like me, but we have all kinds of evidence around us telling us that other people are not like us.
Right. Fiona, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that there's definitely that evidence that there's, not everyone else is like us. And even though we have these really great and wonderful traits to be able to ask for feedback or be open to feedback, sometimes I think we also view the world in the way we view ourselves, thinking that others may be, open as we are. And then we do soon realize that that's not always the case, right? And that's where sometimes a little bit of frustration may come into play, because I'm coming from a place of like pure positive intention to help, to support, totally from a good place, but the other end may not receive it that way. So I think also, that's something that I've had to learn myself, having these really great traits, but at the same time, not everyone else has that or able to even perceive it or accept it or see it in the way that I see it.
Yeah, that's a great point, Fiona.
Absolute truth. Yes. So there are times when we maybe can ask ourselves, is it necessary or safe in this moment to be so extraordinary? So it's interesting that, we want to bring that quality into the world. We want to do that in a way that people can receive us. And those are the things that we learn through time and through trial, as that example that you gave, Colleen, of you did an extraordinary thing there. An ordinary person would not have done that.
Yeah.
It wasn't safe for you to do that in that moment. Right. So we have to, in understanding, there's the advantage and disadvantage. The advantage is I can all of this. The disadvantage is if I say this and speak up in this way, I'm going to be perceived a certain way. Right? How can I be misunderstood? How can this extraordinary quality be misunderstood?
Yeah.
Versus how can it benefit? So then saying, oh, I'm so happy to be part of this company. Thank you for sharing this with me. I've noticed there's like a couple of things that maybe we could improve on if you're open to it. And it's kind of like giving the people that little step you have to kind of like knock. Whereas with each other, we just open the door and walk in the room. But with other people, we learn how to temper ourselves. Right. So this goes along that social skill set.
Yeah. I think something Fiona said also, because of the purity of what Stephanie talked about with giving the advice or accepting the knowledge or actually wanting to learn from other people, what Fiona had said and what Stephanie said kind of go together, because I believe other people think there's malicious intent behind that. And you're like, no, there's really not. There's no malicious intent. However, I can sniff out those that do have malicious intent.
Yes.
Right? I can sniff out who those people are. It certainly isn't me. But the one thing that I've been consistent on, and I guess I would ask all three of you here, is my character and my integrity. And that was one thing in corporate America that I learned that was the only thing I could lean on, was my honesty, my values, which created my character, which was the integrity that I had, where it showed I had zero malicious intent. I wasn't trying to be difficult. I was trying to be helpful. I'm honest with everyone. So with having those in my corner, it allowed me to always come out kind of squeaky clean, I guess is the word, because other people would think I had malicious intent and they would try to, what was the word? Catch you on it, or, hold it against you. And you were like, but how could you hold that against me when everything I did was, not in ill, but for the positivity for others?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's almost like you become a target. Is that a good word?
Well, we make ourselves targets. And this is when I talk about the social ineptness that comes. Most people don't think of themselves as socially inept, but there's a learning there of how to deal with other people. That's what being social is. And that we can't stumble into the room and just, be our full selves with some people. It's just not safe. I do find that because if you're extra thinking, extra feeling, you do tend to have higher integrity, because your conscience is going to be honed. And if you do anything wrong or that's outside your integrity or that's not in alignment with you, you know what? You're not going to leave yourself alone about it.
Mm-hmm.
The feeling, until finally I have to do something about this. I have to confess. I have to do, it has to be in alignment with me. I just can't handle it. I just can't stay at this job 1 second more. I can't, because I'm so aware, right? It's that's where there's a little bit of a disadvantage or a curse. It's be so damn aware of everything that's happening inside and outside of you, right? That it forces you to do the right thing.
I was first aware of that when I was 8 years old, and I was playing with my grandparents' puppy across the street. We lived across the street from a church.
Mm-hmm.
So I was across the street on the lawn playing with the puppy. It was my favorite. He was a dog. He wasn't a puppy. Mm-hmm. And I was holding him and he like jumped from my hands. And when he landed, he kind of made a little yelp, and was limping. And I was like, oh my gosh, he hurt himself. Well, then I didn't say anything to anyone because I didn't want them to think I hurt him, because I didn't. We were just playing and he jumped from my arms, And then they were asking like, oh my gosh, what happened to him? What happened to Fluffy? And I didn't say anything. And that whole night I was so sick to my stomach. I was throwing up. I was so sick. I was like, it was just weighing on my conscience. And then finally the next day I told them what happened, and they were like, why didn't you just tell us? It's not a big deal. And I was like, because I thought you'd blame me for the dog getting hurt, but it wasn't my fault. We were just playing. And like I can't hold it in. It's like, you have to confess.
Yeah. The amount of stuff I think about after the fact is like off the charts.
Yes. Even years later, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think that's what's so crazy about it, is to be able to, go into a situation. I think that's my biggest pain point is, if people, usually people are neutral. I don't get as, too much negative feedback, but the one that stings is when they think I'm not telling the truth. I'm like, I'm only going to tell the truth. I can't, I can't do it. But I think that's what hurts the most, is because, like, as Colleen does too, I pride myself on being as upfront as possible and, try to be, as kind as possible. But I'm sure I can do better in all those. But it really makes me upset when people don't believe me. I'm like, what the world? That's crazy.
Yeah. We've got that keen sense of justice, right?
Yeah. I'm like, hey. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thankfully it doesn't happen too often, but.
And I do find that we'll go back in our mind to things that happened years ago and say, oh, I should have done this. And we'll keep coming up with solutions of, oh, I should have said that instead.
Right. Oh, totally.
And the reason why we do that, I think, is because we're always preparing ourselves for what's ahead. We're super observant. We want to be in control. Right. So we think the next time I'm in this situation, I'm going to overthink this. So the next time I'm in this situation, I'll know exactly what to do. Mm-hmm. And the irony of this is that most people who are that thinker type will freeze. There's like 4 different responses, right? The freeze, the flight, the fleeing, and then the fawning, right? Fawning is where you're like, oh, I'll do whatever you want. I'll just please you. And we tend to do some of that, right? But we tend to freeze because that paralysis by analysis kicks in, and we're like, and then we think later, I should have done this, I should have done that. Okay. So each person's a little different in how they respond to threat, but I do find that happens a lot. And then we prepare ourselves later on, going back in our mind, driving ourselves crazy for what we could have done differently.
Totally.
I think one thing you just said in terms of not being extraordinary every time, I think that sometimes is a little bit of a challenge, like finding that balance of when to be, your full extraordinary self and when I can give maybe 10% in this case or 50% and not feel, sort of guilty, like I'm not being true to myself. You know what I mean? So in some cases, not everyone can handle that full extraordinary you, but all your great traits and qualities. In some cases, that's okay. It's a safe place. People in this environment, I'm sure everyone here is okay with that because we understand that. But in some cases, it's sort of like a curse and not a blessing, as you mentioned before. So how do you find that sort of balance to know when I can give 25% here, I'll give 50 here, and then in other cases, I know I can give 100%.
Yeah, that's great, Fiona. Great question. So it's understanding what is worth your investment as well. So everything should give you back a payback of investment. And in the end, you want to feel good about what you've done. And you can look back on other projects that you've done, things that you've invested in and go, I feel really good about that. And other ones you go, I'm drained, like that was too much. And you learn from each one of those things. I used to actually categorize things because we also love categorizing, organizing in tabs and things like that. So I used to categorize things for myself when I was teaching. For example, I used to be head instructor at a private college for holistic medicine. And some of the stuff I'd come away really drained from, and other stuff just full of energy. And it was like all mixed in together in the same class sometimes. And I actually created this thing for myself. I called it the funometer. And I measured the amount of fun I was having versus the amount of drain I was having. And sometimes it's just a matter of smiley faces or frowns next to after tasks. And I learned that drains me. That's not worth my investment versus this is. And really, there's nothing that we should be giving 100% to. We're told that, or 150%, that's really imbalanced. But we need energy. I used to explain to my students that we begin our day with only so much energy. And we have to be responsible to, like a bank account. Let's say you begin with 100%, which isn't accurate, but let's imagine $100 in your bank account of energy. And you need to first pay your rent. That's what you need to do for yourself, your body. What does my body need? That's going to take time. That's going to take energy to feed myself, to take care of myself. That has to be the first thing. And then, okay, what about this? My work is going to take up how much of my energy? If that's 100%, you're in the wrong job because you can't sustain your own biology. That's when we end up with chronic disease and issues like that. Or if you're in a relationship that's taking way too much of your energy, you can't sustain that. So it's understanding that not everything is worth the investment, and some things you need to let go of. But in our society, we're encouraged to give way too much. We're encouraged to give the shirt off our back. And if we do, then we're a good person. Well, I'm sorry, don't take your shirt off. You need your shirt, keep it on your back. That makes me uncomfortable, right? Like, that's not balanced. If I have an extra shirt in my car and you need a shirt, I'll go get it for you. But I'm not going to take my shirt off, right? Like, this is what we're told in our society is good. Like, give everything you have, give it away. And then that's good. And that comes back to issues of worth too, right? In doing and codependency. But great question, Fiona. I don't know if I answered it, but
yeah, that was a good question, Fiona. Well, ladies, I'm so thankful that we all got to spend today together and kind of brainstorm some of that stuff and at least feel like you're not alone, right? Because it kind of explains a little bit why. My husband always says, "Oh, you're not like everyone else." And I'm like, sure I am. He's like, nope, no. And it's like, oh yeah, okay, well, but you tend to think that other people think exactly like you do. And I think that's the biggest mistake we make, is just realizing we think differently, right? And for me, it was believing that knowing what you had just said earlier in your presentation, Blythe, about what other people say, right? So understanding that that's where they're coming from, it's not matched to where we're coming from. And that was really where I came to the realization that what other people say about me or think about me is really a reflection of them. It's not a reflection of me. And that helped a lot, and I didn't realize that too much back in my early corporate days. It took a long time to grow up in that space to realize, because I heard things like difficult and because I was very opinionated and I had a lot of direction and it was not exactly what everyone wanted, right? The difficult conversations were easy for me to have, and everyone wanted to have them not at the table when we were all in the meeting. They wanted to wait till after the meeting and go behind closed doors and have all the conversations. And it was like, well, then why do we even sit in this room and have a meeting? So I would rather just get it all out on the table and have the conversations, because to me it's easy. And then we're solving the problem and we're moving at the speed of light, where everyone else wants to drag it out and, have the same conversations over and over again, because we know it's not personal. We're just here to solve an issue or, brainstorm with ideas. So anyway, it was wonderful, Blythe. Thank you so much. And for all of you, her email information, and Blythe, if you wanted to drop your website in the chat, you certainly can as well. And share this video. It's out on Facebook. So if someone is like you are, share it with them and say, we're not alone, check out this video. I think you'll find a lot of interest in how you can go through the bullets and align yourself with that, right? And next week we have Dr. Melissa Balazan. We have a lot of doctors. Dr. Melissa Balazan is going to be here. If you know anyone, if you yourself are taking prescription medications or know of anybody that is, she's going to educate us a lot on prescription medications, supplements. There's so many supplements that even I've been taking that she tells me I need to do stuff differently based on any prescription medications you might be taking. It's amazing what we don't know. And pharmacists, that's all they do is study medicine. Doctors study it for a very short amount of time, but pharmacists, that's all they do is study it. So she has a wealth of knowledge. She's going to bring us next Tuesday. So we hope you all can make it before the holidays. It's Tuesday. Hopefully we're not like drinking the eggnog and already getting into that. Although if you've got it at your office, just tell me and I'll head north and I'll come see.
When can you be?
All right, ladies, have a wonderful rest of your week. And thank you again, Blythe, for sharing all that with us. It was such an enlightening conversation today.
Yeah.
So register for next week and we'll see you next week on the Teaching Tuesday. Bye, everyone. Take care.
Yes, thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.